Welcome back to another week of Kernel at the Buzzer. We want to remind you that all the opinions of everyone on this podcast are the opinion of the speaker and the speaker alone and do not reflect the opinion of the entire Kernel. I'm your host, Colton Johnson, and this week we're going to talk about the disgrace that took place at Kroger Field this past Saturday. Kentucky football fell 24-10 to the Auburn Tigers, ending their bowl eligibility and effectively their season, but the Kernel does cover other sports. We're going to talk about the men's basketball team and women's basketball team as they get ready to embark on their seasons. All that is coming up next. Welcome back to another week of Kernel at the Buzzer. This week, I have two guests. Introduce yourself, please.
I'm Kyle McClelland, head of women's basketball.
And I'm Sara Gibson, and I'm a football beat writer.
You know, we've used the term broken record on this podcast I don't even know how many times at this point. And once again, we're going to talk about how awful this football team is. But I feel like there was just this kind of amplification of how sorry this season was and how wrong everything's gone from a broad perspective. And Sara, you had to watch it. I was going to say got to watch it. You had to watch it unfold. What did you see on that awful, awful hallowed field?
We were tricked. It was all mirrors and smoke screens to start the game. Kentucky goes up 10-0. Everybody's looking around in this press box like, well, what do we know? We thought this was going to be a blowout. We thought Kentucky was going to get stomped. And then Kentucky became Kentucky, and they get 24 unanswered points scored on them, and they lose 24-10. So all the games that I've covered this year have been losses.
Yep.
And this one felt the most deflating by far.
Yeah, no, I got to cover Southern Miss and Ohio, dude. I got to cover rarities, you know?
So I was there for the South Carolina loss, and that one felt like a gut punch, but it did feel like, recoverable. It's early in the season. There's still a lot more to go. After the Auburn loss, it feels like the season is quickly slipping. There's not going to be much fan interest left anymore. The stadium was not a sellout, and it's going to look like it's not going to be a sellout at all for the rest of the season minus the Louisville game.
That's kind of one of the narratives that is just glaring at you, but especially with this game because it was kind of like a one last chance opportunity. Like, of all the things that have troubled you in these past couple games, you have this kind of a get-right game, and it really couldn't have gone worse. And Kyle, I don't know your thoughts on that, but it's kind of wraps.
I'm thinking like it's always something with Kentucky, and at this point of the season, it's very evident that there's a big skill issue between Kentucky and these other SEC teams. They can get off the hot starts like they did against Auburn. They can compete with teams here and there. They beat Ole Miss, but since then it's been all downhill when it should have been going uphill, and probably 3 games they should have won. I just think there's no adaptation with this team. There's no changing. I think it's safe to say that nothing will really change going forward.
Because it feels like every time they play a team and every time they lose to a team, there's always like some different issue that pops up that wasn't an issue prior. Because like you have this week, you hold their quarterback to pretty like below average quarterback numbers, 172 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 pick. Jarquez Hunter had quarterback numbers at running back, 278 yards on the ground, 2 touchdowns, and he averaged 12 flipping yards a carry on 23 carries. Now, because we've always kind of milked how good this front seven was, they have NFL caliber players on that, and of all the things that I thought I was going to witness on Saturday, I can't really say that I had Jarquez Hunter going $278 for all that crap. I mean, it really wasn't on my bingo card.
At the start of the season, I 100% agree that was not on the bingo card. But the last few games, we have been seeing Kentucky slip in the run game, and that was definitely exposed against Auburn. Jarquez Hunter just had his way with the front seven, and it's football games are. It's often said that football games are won and lost at the line of scrimmage, and Kentucky has just been getting dominated at the line of scrimmage the last 3 football games, and that's where all the losses are starting at.
I think defense is built off of passion from the fans, and I also think it's momentum from the team in general.
Yeah.
So we can really dig deep and look at numbers and everything they're giving up. The defense is on the field majority of the game. And I feel like there's no passion when they go back out there, because it's like every drive, this has to be we can't give up a field goal, we can't give up a touchdown, have to get a stop because our offense isn't going to score is probably like the thought process. They don't want to probably say it out loud,
Mm-hmm.
but they know their offense isn't going to put up 30 points or anything like that. So I think the defense constantly is like having to get these stops and make big plays in big games, and they can't be asked to be 100% perfect all the time.
And then you talk about the momentum there, and at the beginning of this game, like I said, it was 10-0, and JQ Hardaway goes and gets that interception, and
Yep.
Kentucky is looking to go down there, go up 17-0, or at least 13-0, put it at a 3-score game. Instead, you go 3-and-out, and you punt the ball right back to Auburn, who goes down there and scores, and it's immediately a ball game. So when you're not playing complimentary football, it's hard for the defense to do its job, and I agree with you on that.
And I mean, like that drive they gave up the touchdown, when they're up 10-0, you get that pass interference call. Like, those are mistakes at this point. Like, you can't do that because automatic first down. It's a third down. You probably get another stop. Kentucky has the ball back. They could go up 13-0, 17-0, like you said. So, mistakes like that, you just can't make it this late in the season.
Of all the things that I thought I was going to witness, like obviously I'm not a stranger to watching this Kentucky team struggle.
Yeah.
But when it came to playing Auburn, one of the few things that I thought I would see was just an all-out collapse. And it was just an all-out collapse. And I think when that's happening, you go into halftime, you're not the finish that you wanted going into the half. You come out trying to make changes.
Mm-hmm.
And there was one weird one coming out, just glaring at you. A different quarterback. Number 2 trots out there. And he runs a play, and I think everyone was like, okay, here comes Brock.
Mm-hmm.
And he stayed out there.
No change.
So just from y'all's standpoint, I mean, there's an overall opinion on why you think that happened, how you think he did, and if you think – I mean, obviously I don't know if there's any opinion on if it was a successful experiment. He had 30 yards. So –
And a red zone interception.
And the red zone interception. Yeah. So, I mean, just y'all's stance on, like, why. I just want to know why.
Why? I don't know. But I think the purpose of it was to answer questions. Brock hasn't had the best season. I mean, that's a very easy statement to make, but making that change at quarterback, just seeing, okay, it's a tie ball game, let's see what he can do. I thought that he stayed in the game after that, first series. Down 17-10 in the second half was not the best decision, but it's a failed experiment, like you said. I think it answered the question that Kentucky doesn't have a quarterback, and that there's nobody on the team that can play that position and compete with SEC teams. Yeah. I think the answer that you're looking for is they need to stick with Brock as a starter and then putting in Gavin for those run situations because, looking back at the Vandy game and looking back at some other games earlier in the season, like Gavin made those big plays running the ball, especially at Ole Miss, that, last-second touchdown he had. So, fumbled and then he had. Yeah. But regardless, I think that's a style you got to rock with, going forward.
So I was definitely very confused by it. So in the post-game pressers, both Stoops and offensive coordinator Bush Hamden reiterated the fact that they were planning on bringing Gavin Wimsatt in on the third possession of the game, but they decided not to because Brock and the offense were moving the ball so well. And so the question that it brought up to some media members in the post-game presser was, well, when Gavin comes in and goes 3-and-out and only gets a first down because of a PI call, it's, well, why do you stick with him? Like, these questions are getting answered. You pulled Brock for going 3-and-out, so why don't you go back to him or throw Cutter in there?
I mean, another thing, too, that I know we talked about is because you said that they had that, like, initially they had that rigid plan of 3 drives than Gavin. I can't really fathom a world where the head coach and the OC are on the same page of, like, no matter what. Like, we're bringing, like, I mean, obviously you can phrase it better, like, conditional to, like, how he should have phrased it, like, conditional to how Brock's playing. We will look at making that change. But, I mean, I know you said a bunch of people in there weren't buying it.
Yeah, immediately when he said that Gavin was going to come in for that third possession, Jonathan, who covered the game with me, whispers in my ear. I don't buy it for a second, like
Nah.
immediately. And I just kind of looked at him. I gave him a nod. And then when I went to the field house for the rest of the interviews and Bush reiterated that, I immediately texted Jonathan. I was like, Bush said the same thing. And so I don't know if that truly was the plan or if Stoops and Bush had a small
well-coordinated lie.
I just don't understand, like, even if it's the truth, like, why are we going to just purposely say this is Gavin's drive? Like, you have to keep a defense on edge. If you see that in film next week, a team's going to be like, oh, well, Gavin's going to play his whole set. And, if we know he's in, this is the offense they're running. And, you got to switch it up a little bit.
I think the good news about it is, well, they have not committed to a starter for the Tennessee game. I have a feeling that'll be Brock. And I think the good news about the whole situation is Brock is an adult. Brock has proven that he is a true guy's guy. He cares about his teammates and the team first, and so I think he's going to be able to handle getting benched in that second half, come back in, start no problem without having a chip on his shoulder about it.
That's kind of one of the things that's always kind of not really bothered me, but it's kind of stuck out to me. It's like, obviously, the dude's not met the expectations. He's fallen far, far below them, and you're never going to knock the person he is. He's a good guy. He just simply, I just don't think he has. It's like you said, it's a skill issue. I just think there's just no ability, and it's like I could go off on a whole tangent. We've had this conversation a plethora of times, but I struggle with trying to comprehend how truly awful this quarterback room is.
Yeah, like you said, skill issue. We've talked about this weeks now.
Yeah.
There's no answer for Brock. It's just, I don't want to just say he's not good enough, but he's disappointed.
Yeah.
I think coming into the season, we had pretty decent expectations from him coming from Georgia, thinking he was, at the most prestigious SEC school besides Alabama. We're thinking he's going to be somebody that can bare minimum get us a couple third downs.
Yeah.
He does his job at making Alex Rayner look good, but getting the ball in the end zone, I mean, it's not really his specialty. And when you can't score as an offense, point blank, you can't win a football game. So
That's hilarious. That's one of the funniest sentences I've ever heard. He's great at letting Alex Rayner be good at his job. Alex Rayner might end up in the NFL one day, and it's all because Brock just cannot get it in the end zone. But, broadwise, just looking at the Auburn loss, the glaring thing, because, they kind of set the mark of bowl eligibility with this team now. They got to get to a bowl game. That's obviously we're past the point of that being that being like in danger. It's just not happening anymore. This team they have a Murray State, which is a softball pitch. They have Louisville at home, which if you can scrape that out just by the irony of you're playing Louisville, you never really know how that matchup's going to go. You still got to steal one from either Knoxville or Austin.
Yeah. When I think about the probability of that happening, stealing one from Tennessee or Texas, it's probably near zero.
Yeah.
Tennessee's all black jerseys. It's a rivalry game. Like, they're taking Kentucky so serious, and I think it's quite hilarious. Like, Tennessee is probably going to walk them. I don't think Tennessee's the best, but that's in regards to, if they're playing Alabama or Georgia. You're like, Tennessee's not the best. Bama or Georgia probably win. But then you think, well, playing Kentucky, they're going to keep things tight. They're going to make sure everything's perfect.
Yeah.
And then Texas, I don't even think I have to talk about. Louisville makes sense. That's the one game you could get lucky with, playing at home. Louisville plays to their competition. So maybe it's but Louisville's competing with teams like Miami and Notre Dame. So
not even just competing. It's like they're getting in shootouts with Miami and keeping up with Miami.
50-point games. So it's, I don't want to say anymore, but there's just near zero odds for Kentucky to even win these final games.
Yep.
Yeah, becoming bowl eligible for the Wildcats is just such a daunting task for the rest of the season. You pretty much essentially have to win out the remainder of the home games, the Murray State and Louisville. Tennessee's big brother in this matchup. Tennessee owns Kentucky, always have, and quite honestly in football always will. I think especially with Sampson just running all over the SEC and everybody they play, and how bad the Kentucky rush defense has been, I don't see them matching up with Tennessee well at all. I think they have a better chance of stealing one at Texas than they do at Tennessee.
The only thing that I could say that could maybe shift tides in that Tennessee game is there have been games this week, primarily looking at the Arkansas game, where Nico Ilamalieva has struggled. You know, we talk about young quarterbacks. Obviously, this dude's like he was on people's map well before he got to college, like just the caliber of player that he was. And seeing that as he's trying to make that transition to the college game, he's struggled a bit. Obviously, you know, people know what he is at this point. And I honestly, at some point, hope that he doesn't figure out what he is, because he has everything that you need to be a pro pass rusher. He struggles with the mental. And I think if Kentucky can somehow, and I know I'm not trying to say that, you know, banking it on other quarterback play of Kentucky, but if Kentucky can somehow put Nico in that box and Dylan Sampson doesn't just run rampant, which he's probably going to, that they're like maybe is the smallest whisker of hope that Kentucky could get that game done, but that's kind of neither here or there.
I think the only thing that would disprove your point is the fact that when Tennessee's quarterback is on the road, he struggles, but home field's everything. I think the main thing you can look at is Florida. You know, they go into an overtime game with Florida at Tennessee, but then you can compare Kentucky going to Florida and getting dog washed. You know, home field means everything in college football. And the fact that this game is at Tennessee alone should just say that Tennessee's winning this ball game.
Make no mistake, I'm not saying that Kentucky is going to beat Tennessee. That's just not happening. But I would say if
they could keep a tempo of the game. In
a world where they do, it will be because Nico just panics and collapses. Like that's just the only way, because I don't see Kentucky hanging on in a shootout.
Brock would match his stats though. Like if he has 100 with 2 picks, I mean Brock would match that.
Yeah. He might even get you 135 and 2 picks, maybe throw a touchdown here or there if Dane's that open. But I don't know. It's just I feel like it's this like then and again it's just like a broken record with this team.
Right.
But with that being said, I know that with that loss to Auburn, for all intents and purposes, season's over. But in the silver lining of the situation, there are more sports at the University of Kentucky.
Very true.
Believe it or not. They do have more than just football. And they have one that, you know, now that football is as bad as it is, I would say the stakes are even higher. Kai, I know you're covering you're the beat head for the women's team.
Sure.
Just give me the broad thing. What are you excited about that team? What are you looking forward to with this team?
You know, this is the first year they've all, you know, it's a brand new program. And I think bringing in Kenny Brooks and bringing in, you know, several assistant coaches, having more than 10 transfers come in, having 2 returning players from last year's squad, this is going to be a team that's going to experiment a lot. They're going to, you know, try and utilize their talent, their WNBA talent they have with Georgia Moore. It's going to be interesting to see, you know, if they maintain that middle ground, because when I picture their season, I picture a really high or a really low.
Yeah.
I'm excited just to see how, like you said, it's not the only sport at the University of Kentucky, and I'm excited to see how the fans rally around them to see if there's truly an interest in women's basketball. I think the past 2 years with Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese and seeing these new stars come up and really rejuvenate the sport.
Yeah.
I think it's exciting for women's basketball as a whole to see it getting more viewership. And now with, you know, true WNBA talent, a true team with a large front court, it's going to be exciting to see if, like, to put it bluntly, if people really do care about it and treat it as, you know, a prestige program here at Kentucky.
I think arguably you can already say that the fans are interested.
Sold out season tickets.
Yeah, that's what I was getting ready to say. That was the point I was making. They sold out season tickets for the first time ever in program history. The fans clearly care. The Kenny Brooks era is going to be a totally different one from the Kyra Elsie era, one that I'm personally very pumped for, just like with the men's program and the entire new era. It's actually quite a sad time to be a December graduate. Not the right time to leave. Kentucky basketball on the men's and women's side is just, like Mark Pope said, book 1, chapter 1. It's just exciting to see and how it's going to unfold.
So the thing, because I covered the team last year,
Mm-hmm.
and there was always this I wouldn't say feeling of dread, but it was just knowing, like, this inevitability of every single time I walk, because they played at Rupp last year, because their brand new shiny stadium that they have now was getting built or getting remodeled, and every single time I walked in the Rupp, it was like, okay, how bad are they going to lose today? And I'm excited for y'all, just in the sense that y'all don't have to go into those stadiums, just knowing that they're going to get, well, at least until they establish what type of team they are.
Yeah, going into Memorial and just seeing it like brand spanking new, and there's a different energy in that building, and that's kind of what Kenny brings to the table as well. Like walking into that press conference room, like feeling so confident on a program that won 12 games last year. It's like to have that energy level after knowing like you have a lot on your plate this season. It says numbers to how much he trusts this team.
It radiates. His energy spreads to not only his players, but to the fans, to Mitch. It gets everybody excited for the season. And Kenny, you're right. Kenny Brooks is just a different energy, and it's a new energy, and it's an energy that Kentucky women's basketball absolutely needed.
That's one of the things, just not even looking at the coach that they are. Just Mark Pope and Kenny Brooks as just the men that they are. It's just Mark Pope. I mean, John Calipari, after a loss, or even after a win, he'll be personable, and he'll give you, go out, kiss a baby or two. But this Mark Pope guy comes in, sits down for his post game, turns to the fans, and he's signing basketballs, signing posters, everything as he's talking to Tom Leach. There's this different level of, I'll say, personability with both of these guys, because it was the same thing with Kyra. Because in the same way that she struggled, and she knew that the caliber of questions that people were going to ask of her was always, I'm not going to say they were constructive. Sometimes they were like, what are we doing here? And she was never the greatest at handling those questions. Criticism came very cross at her. But I feel like with these two guys, it's more so that people are falling in love with being around them, knowing the person that they are, they haven't even seen them coach an actual basketball game yet.
And to that point, I feel like for them to already build, this reputation for themselves and be so involved with fan bases, and going out and about even, and like talking to people, looking so personable, I think it's really going to help their case when, they have to be like, hey, can you forgive us? Like, the season probably didn't turn out how we wanted it to, but it's going to be quite easy compared to John Calipari when he talks them up, and then they crashed and burned.
Yeah.
And now with this new chapter, it's going to be very easy to be like, well, guys, this was our first season. You love me. Let's run it back the second season and, see what happens.
That is kind of one of the things that I was thinking about, just in broad stance and all, is just if there is like a lapse in production in terms of like if they go out there and it's kind of the same stories, like they still lose to Tennessee, obviously if they still lose to South Carolina, if the bigger dogs in the SEC and in the country, because Kentucky typically has a pretty tough out of conference schedule.
Yeah,
they did last year, and I'm sure you've looked at their schedule. I'm sure it is this year, but in that sense, I wonder how much grace is going to be given in the sense that it's their first year, because it's not like there's no experience.
I think, just to answer your question, I think like I said, it's going to be very easy to forgive them. I think this is like Sara said earlier, this is the true like definition of a new era for Kentucky basketball.
Yeah.
And when you have so many transfers coming in, you have so many things to do. You got to build chemistry. You got to make sure you set your lineups. You got to make sure you know what your style of play is and who fits that style of play. They've been doing that all off season, but then once you get into the brunt of the season, you're gonna have to, analyze who's really good in the SEC, who's the big dogs that we have to go against. You're gonna face injuries. Kentucky women's basketball already faced 2 injuries with Jordan Obi, and you're gonna deal with that stuff as the season goes on, and it's gonna be easy for fans to be understanding and charismatic towards the coaches instead of really trying to like take them down.
So if you had to kind of ballpark it, just expectations-wise, I wouldn't say a record, but not a record prediction because that's a whole
Yeah.
that would take you a while. But just in terms of performance, when you see this team walk out on a court against South Carolina, and when you see this team go out on the court against Tennessee or wherever they play, the expectations when it comes to just how they will perform.
I think they're going to be a pace team. I'm going to compare them to Virginia men's basketball. I think that's the best comparison I can make. I think they have their star with Georgia. I think they have their second guard with Deja, and those are going to be the brunt of the offense, and it's going to be pick and roll with those bigs, and then it's going to be slow the pace down, be defensive. But also at the same time, I could be totally wrong. I could see this team being able to get out and shoot, just like Kentucky men's basketball. How we're seeing them shoot 30 to 43s a game in their exhibitions lately. Against a team like South Carolina that's been undefeated, obviously I don't think there's any room to say that they're going to, straight up beat them. But I think there is a case where if it's, at Kentucky and it's getting real nitty gritty, that we could see some technicals fly, and we could even see a game finish within 10 points.
Yeah. So ceiling and floor, because I know you said that it can go either here or here. What do you envision that floor being? I want both of you for this one.
Floor, I envision 10 to 12 wins, and it's just a case where you don't perform good in the SEC tournament, don't make the national, obviously, and you're just looking at that transfer portal, trying to find who's coming in, who's, staying, that kind of situation. Ceiling, quite the opposite. I see, any range from 20 to 24 wins, going to the SEC tournament and actually competing. Not going to say win it, but definitely, be very close to that landmark.
Yeah.
Like I said, I don't think there's any in between in that. I don't see them just barely scraping by or barely getting in many situations. I think it's, like I said, it's very floor ceiling based.
I'll kind of give a record prediction. Jeez, I cannot speak right now. I can see Kentucky women's basketball easily getting 17 to 20 wins this season. Just with the completely new roster, like Kai's saying, WNBA talent, and also just with all the turnover that women's college basketball has seen the last season. All the stars that we're accustomed to seeing, other than Haley Van Lith and Paige Beckers, have gone on to the WNBA. So I think there's going to be some new top teams in the college landscape, and I think Kentucky has potential to be one of them. I mean, there's a reason that they're ranked preseason 22 or 23. I can't remember exactly which one, but there's a reason for it.
So if I'm correct, I think both these teams start their actual seasons on Monday, right?
Yeah, Monday, November 4th, the first home game.
Y'all are USC Upstate.
Mm-hmm.
That men's basketball plays Wright State. Wow. It's already here. How excited are you?
I'm very excited. Like I said earlier, I'm really just wanting to know how the fan base is going to rally around them. Season tickets are sold out. True, I'm going to say must-see basketball, because you talk about this WNBA talent, Georgia was projected to go first round. So I feel like everyone nationally, she's been named to all these preseason teams and all SEC first team. It's a ticket seller. And I think just the excitement to watch her play and to see if the team really, really, really builds around her and makes themselves competitors.
Awesome. Well, y'all, if y'all don't have any other closing thoughts, about ready to get up out of here if y'all are.
Yeah.
Well, the good thing about the Kentucky Kernel is they provide coverage across all sports. Our very own Sara Gibson will be joined by Jonathan Bruner as they head down to Knoxville to take on the Tennessee Volunteers. Kai, are you going Monday? Are you covering that USC Upstate game?
Yes, sir. I will be there.
Awesome. And I'm sure Cole Park, he's everywhere. So I'm sure he'll be at Wright State on Monday.
For sure.
But all of that, we'll have coverage everywhere. But for that, we're done here, and we will see you next week. We want to thank you for tuning into this week's episode of Kernel at the Buzzer. We'll be back with plenty more next week after the Kentucky football team takes on the Tennessee Volunteers and the Kentucky men's team takes on Wright State, with the women's team taking on USC Upstate. Until then, I want to encourage you to head on over to KYKernel.com or KYKernel Sports on Twitter or X for all of your UK athletics coverage. And until then, I've been Colton Johnson, and we'll see you next time.